Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been paying attention to several videos that I may have put out over the past few months, especially in regards to role-playing games or MMOs specifically, you may have heard me talk a little bit about a game called Wildstar. And that's what we're looking at today. Now, you may have heard me talk it up a bit, say that I believe it's going to be a great game, that I like the developers, I believe they have a great sense of humor. And they have these awesome videos on their YouTube channel for Wildstar. They have the official Wildstar YouTube channel, and they've got some really great videos there. They call them Dev Speak. And they go and they actually tell you about their design process, how they want the gameplay mechanics to work. And I think they do a reasonable job of kind of showing you exactly what their philosophy is, and it's a big reason why I think this game can do really well. As you can already tell, it's got influences from, you know, obviously Sci-Fi and some World of Warcraft from the way they do their character styles and things like that. It's not a realistic game by any means, and that may turn some people off, but honestly I think you should really judge something like this more by its mechanics than if you're not happy with the art style. I happen to kind of like the art style in some ways. It allows them to create some very interesting characters, but above that I think they have some really good animation flow and things like that. I think the way the game feels and looks is really nice in a lot of areas. So what I want to do is kind of show you a little bit of the character customization, hop into the game, talk a little bit about what's good, what's bad, things like that. So let's go ahead and start off with your character creation. You've got the two sides, the good guys and the bad guys. Okay, so really it's the Exiles and the Dominion, but really there is no doubt that they are the bad guys. Let's talk about a quest I ran into as the Exiles. The leader of the Dominion sent his legion of troops out to fight giant wasps because they had honey, and he needed this honey in order to flavor his tea. He wanted the honey before tea time. Yes, that was something that he did, and as you're running across in this zone, you see his troops trapped in these giant globs of honey as the wasps were killing them. And yes, so he sent his legion of men to die for honey for tea. So that's how evil they are. I'm sure there's more, but that's just one example. Honestly, I probably plan to eventually roll Dominion. I haven't played very many quests as Dominion. I mostly played a little bit of Exile. But as Dominion, you get to be a furry creature that wants to take over the world and blow stuff up. So, that fits into my gnome craving, I suppose. Alright, so on the Dominion side, you have 4 races each side. Each side has their humans, although they're called something slightly different. So you have the Exiles, humans, you have the Orin, which are, I don't even know really what they are. I want to say they're bunny cat people in a way, but their ears have so many different shapes and sizes. I've seen cat ears, I've seen bat ears, literally like the flying bats, bunny ears. That's not necessarily bunny, but tons of different ears. So I mean, even butterfly wing-esque ears. I don't know what they are, but they have tails, and they bound around. Granok, which is kind of a race of rock people. And the Mordesh, which is a race of people whose genetic code is apparently breaking down, so they have to augment their bodies. As you can see, the bone and sinew in there are basically in these transparent bubbles. So yeah, their bodies are decaying, and they are out trying to find ways to keep themselves alive, which you would think they would be part of the evil race for that, but they are not. What I like here is that you can see at a glance what classes each race can be. At the bottom, you can see that the Orin cannot be certain classes, the Granok cannot be the opposite of those classes, and the Mordesh, this is the casters, so they cannot just be mages. When you've chosen your class, or sorry, when you've chosen your race, you can then move on to be a class, and there are 6 classes in the game. What they've done is they've removed pure DPS. There is no one class that does nothing but DPS. Half of the classes are tanks, half the classes are healers. But any class can simply be DPS. It is an action-based game, so you're going to see a lot of things on the ground, a lot of telegraphs and things like that. That is their main style of play. So you're going to see combat in the vein of, say, Neverwinter or Guild Wars. That's pretty much what you should expect here. And so you might be thinking, well, how's healing going to be done? Because they're not removing tanks and healers like Guild Wars did. So you might be wondering, how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to do a combination of tab targeting and the effects on the ground as you see, which honestly makes the game quite difficult. I don't think it's quite Guild Wars hard, because a problem I had with Guild Wars was, since you were in charge of your own heals and aggro was all over the place, it was just really hard to dictate, to figure out where things were going to go. This game doesn't seem to have as much of an issue with it, but it can still be difficult, because if you're a tank and you're avoiding stuff, sometimes you might accidentally get out of a healing effect, and that can be troublesome. So the 6 classes you have, I'll go over the tanking classes first. You have the warrior, which is, as you can see, they use a sword. They are pretty much, they don't use a shield though. The shields in this game are like electrical shields, like, think the shields out of maybe Star Trek or something. It's literally a regeneration shield, like Halo or something like that. So you don't use an actual physical shield. You use a two-handed sword and you get up close. Engineer is a ranged class. It does use guns, but it also uses bots, so it's kind of a pet class, and it can tank. It is a ranged tank, which is what makes that one fairly unique and interesting. Unfortunately, they aren't showing any kind of gear for the class as I click on them, so I apologize for that. Lastly, as far as tanks go, there is the Stalker. Well, as you can see, they use claws. They are the rogue class in this game. They use stealth, so yes, you have a stealth tank. And as I can tell, I don't think it's just all about evasion. I do think you do have some mitigation abilities that allow you to survive. So there are some very unique styles of tanking here. The fact that they have a rogue that can tank, I think, is kind of interesting. The fact that they have a ranged tank is kind of interesting. Alright, the Esper, they use these things called Psyblades, but these are the casters. These are your mages in the game. They will be slinging spells. Instead of slinging fireballs, they tend to sling mental projections of swords and things like that. They essentially do the same thing, but it has a slightly different aesthetic and effect. But that's the range caster. They can be healers. Pretty much all the casters can, so you have that. You have the medic, which is obviously, you would think, yes, okay, medics, duh, they're going to heal. But they're also a dot class, and they use twin laser pistols, or resonators as they're called, and put a lot of area of effects and what appear to be dots, honestly. They really do feel like they're probably a dot class, but yes, they are a pretty straightforward healing class as well. And then there's Spellslinger, which is almost like a ranger. They are the gun-using class. They dual-wield guns, fire at a distance, and they can fire off shields and do have some direct healing as well as some area of effect healings that they can shoot out. So that's pretty cool. I do like the different styles you have there. After you've chosen your class, you get to choose what they call a path. Paths is one of the things I really like about this game that I think really sets it apart from some of the other games out there. So what a path is, this isn't really I almost want to say it's like a crafting thing, but it's not. Path is a way of life. This dictates your gameplay style. And if you don't choose one of these paths, you can still help other people on different paths do their missions if you're in a group together, or even if you happen to run across them. So, Soldier. Soldier is kind of the guy that wants to kill stuff. You don't have to be a warrior. You can be a healer. You can be an Esper. You can be anything you want to be any one of these classes. They are not restricted by any means. But Soldier is the one that likes to kill people. You're going to go out, you're going to end up finding these things. You're going to find missions called holdouts, which can be one of two different ways. One, either you're holding off against a timed assault, so you have to maybe live for 4 minutes, survive everything they throw at you. Another might be a wave assault, so you fight different waves of enemies, and then the fourth and final wave, or depending upon which ones, they might get longer later. On the final wave, you tend to get a boss, so you fight the boss. Sometimes you can get very strong enemies through your soldier missions. You get assassination quests, so you'll be out in the world, and there'll be these enemies that are out there normally, but there might be special named enemies that are out there as well, and soldiers will get missions to specifically kill them and get some rewards for that. Lastly, another thing I've seen is what they call a SWAT mission, which is where you get to test special weapons. Most of the time they're kind of simplistic, at least from what I've seen, but there was at least one that I rather enjoyed, where there were some monsters in the area that were fairly tough, much tougher than my level, and I tend to avoid them, but I found a SWAT mission that gave me a flamethrower, and I got to burn them down and kill them in one shot with it. So it was kind of fun to run around and get revenge on these things that have been killing me. So there's some pretty neat things there. Settler builds structures. And I'm not talking about player housing, because player housing is in this game. Settlers build structures in the world like buff stations. They can help create objects in towns. So even the main cities will have these settler nodes where you find materials in the world. They're there for settlers. Settlers can randomly find these materials. You put these materials into one of these nodes and it can form stations, form buildings. Any player can use a settler station once it's been created, and some of these things include things like increased movement speed, critical strike rating, additional hit points or hit point regeneration. So they're buffs, general buffs that you put out in the world, and everybody can use them. So when there's a settler nearby, usually people are quite happy to see them, and you can get a lot of nice benefits of that. Scientists are the people that like to go out and find lore. So do you like paying attention to the quests? Do you like knowing what's going on in the world? That's what the scientist is for. You can go around, you can scan objects, it will give you a history of the object. You will also be able to unlock certain doors in like high-tech ruins and things like that. So there will be these locked doors that other players cannot pass through unless a scientist comes by and helps them with that. Now, the good news on that, I mean, you might be thinking, oh, you're losing out on something there if you don't have one. There's usually not something super focused over there. There might be a data cube which gives you some history. It'll actually talk to you and give you some history. Usually it's something kind of fun, but it's not usually anything that you're going to specifically miss out on, like nothing important. A lot of these are basically just minor things that help you out in some way, or again give you lore. In no way are any of these paths really meant to give you a huge advantage over anyone else. In fact, most of the perks you get from them are non-combat related. And you can get abilities from following a path, and all of those abilities, from what I've seen, really are not combat related. They're not going to help you in a fight, and most of them can't even be used in PvP when they do have combat related things on them. So there's that. Scientists are cool, but the one I like the most is the Explorer. I like to equate this with Guild Wars 2. This is seriously the Guild Wars 2 button. Because in Guild Wars 2, you could run around the world, explore the map, and you got rewarded for that. Either you got items for completing a map, or you could go and find a jumping puzzle. When you completed the jumping puzzle, you got something out of it. That is what the explorers do. They run around, they find little nooks and crannies. They also find secret doors, much like the scientists, but they'll usually find them in things like caves. They might find like a rock that opens up a door. They will find the jumping puzzles or ways to get to higher spots on the map that other players typically can't get to. And usually when they activate it, other players can use that for a temporary amount of time. But this is the class that you go around, you get rewarded for finishing a map. You're basically tasked with going out, finding the highest places on a map. Sometimes there's races where they ask you, hey, get from point A to point B as fast as you can. Things like that. And these are just little things that you can do out in the world. They have their own experience bars. So basically you have your class experience and you have your path experience. And both of them give you, their own rewards and structures and things like that. But they're things to do in the world. And that's what I like about this, is that each of these things gives you something to do in a playstyle that you can call uniquely your own. And you can, of course, make multiple characters with any one of these paths. Alright, before I move on, I will go ahead and show you guys the races for the Dominion. They have, like I said, another human-type race. They are called Cassians in this regard. As you can see, very uptight, arrogant, maybe. Especially that one. You have Draken, which are, well, demonic type. Yeah, I mean, they get the cool races, don't they? Yeah. This is the one I was talking about before. Chua, the little gnomish, furry experimenting guy. They're like gnomes, basically. They love to experiment. They're all about technology. They like blowing things up. That is the Chua. And the Makari, which is a race of sentient machines, basically. So there you go. Those are all the classes. So let me go ahead and get into the game. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wildstar, and you are inside the game now, and as you can see, very much a cartoonish style, but the world, I think, looks pretty nice. Now, I've got everything turned on high, so performance might not be the best right now, but yeah, this gives you a pretty good look at it. So you can kind of see you've got your action bars on the bottom, health bars for me and my target here. Now, they recently revamped this UI, so it's a little different from what I've seen in the past, but and it's unfortunately had some issues, some challenges. it crashes from time to time, specifically the nameplates over enemies' heads. Now, the one good thing about this is that from what I can tell, they're going to allow you to get add-ons. As you can see, a lot of the default stuff in the game is considered its own add-on, so you can actually turn on and off features of the base game through this add-ons tab. And I'm sure you can find all sorts of other non-standard add-ons on the net. And this is good because you never know when you might want to just change things around, because while the UI is fairly nice, fairly sleek, again, it does have issues. There could be crashing. The game is unfortunately in the final day of the open beta right now. That's what you're looking at right now. This is basically 2 weeks away from release, and I'm a little worried. I'm going to be quite honest. So let's start with that. I think the game may have some challenges when it gets close to release. They've had lots of trouble. I think the base systems are mostly working. Nothing has really been game-breaking or earth-shattering, but a lot of little annoyances that I think they really will need to clean up. So they're going to really have to take the 2 weeks they've got and really, really work on it. So, alright, let's kind of take a look at basic mechanics and things like that. First and foremost, do know you can zoom out way far. I do like that. That is helpful, though I like to be in a bit when I'm in just kind of wandering the world. So this game works on limited action sets. You may be familiar with this if you've played games like Diablo, or even Guild Wars 2 in a way, because Guild Wars 2 limited your action sets to the weapons you held onto. You can see here that I have multiple abilities here on my different tabs here, all sorts of abilities that I don't have unlocked. Every class has these 3 trees, the Assault, Support, and Utility. They are grouped that way just because they are pretty much usually offensive powers. Support will be whatever you are, usually tank or healing, possibly other things you might need, and Utility can be quality of life stuff that can help you do one or the other. Rather than come up with unique names for these, they just went ahead and named them the same across the board, and that also fits in these things called amps, which are kind of like your talent trees. So this is where you can put points into things like improved power by a certain percentage, or here I have this perk, well, my character's above 500 kinetic energy, he gains defense, which allows him to deflect attacks by 5%. So you can see you can get different little perks here. You can get abilities here as well. Such as the bolstering strike ability here. And so if I go back to the ability tabs, you may notice here that, for example, Trimmer says it's unlocked through amps. So there's some abilities you have to find in the world, because some of these, like for example this one here, full defense, I did not start with that. I had to find it. I had to actually find the amp, then I had to gain the levels to get it. So these here too as well, impenetrable and full force, I can't unlock those even if I had the points for them, because I haven't found the amp yet. Amps appear to be found through, I found some through questing, and I found some through doing challenges and quests, or challenges and just mobs, killing mobs sometimes, depending upon the mob, you know, a special mob or something like that. Now, I am level 15, or actually I think I'm 16 at this point. Yes, I am level 16. And what that means is I've unlocked 2 action sets. So you do have multiple specs that you can unlock. And you get this for free. I mean, once you hit 15, you get both sets. You can move your powers around here. Like I already have a set of powers, but I can take powers off and put them back on or change them around for free. This costs me nothing. Now the abilities themselves do cost me stuff, but to move them around doesn't cost a thing. And that includes these abilities I have multiple points into. I can remove it, put it back, maybe move the points around to other abilities like so. Which is nice, so you don't have to worry about moving your abilities around, but the action sets are there so that you can have predefined builds. So I can have an assault build, which is my DPS build, or right now, I can, as I'm doing right now, I can use my tank build. Now the one thing that this does help you with is amps. Since amps you do have to buy respecs, as you can see here, it would take me 19 silver, almost 20 silver to reset my amps here. With the second action set, I can actually put my ability points where I want to, and that prevents me from having to constantly respec. So if I want to tank and do damage, then I can go ahead and make action set 1 and 2 be related to those in my amps. But at any time, even if I'm on my tank set, for example, I can swap things out. Like say we're about to fight something in a dungeon that needs more DPS. I can go ahead and go into my action bars here and say, okay, swap out to these abilities here. And I'll be slightly less effective because my amps are not helping me with my damage, they're helping me with my tanking. Alright, so lastly here there is a section for your path. I am a soldier on this character, so I can get this back into the fray. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This was a healing that gives you full health as long as you're out of combat. But you can't use it in battlegrounds or war plots. So while I'm leveling, this allows me to stay and kill monsters a little quicker. I kill a group of monsters, maybe I'm low on health, I can pop back into the fray, and I'm back into the game. Bailout is like a secondary Hearthstone. There are Hearthstones in this game. You can bind yourself to particular points, and Bailout is a soldier-specific version of it. Has a 30-minute cooldown. Takes you and all of your allies around you to your nearest binding point, from what I can tell, which is kind of nice. But as you can obviously tell that there are just too many abilities here for me to be able to use on my bar. I have, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, 8. I have 8 action slots, which is far more than another game I've been playing recently, Elder Scrolls. And I can change them out at will, which is really nice. But you have 8 of these, so you have to pick from this supply of a rather generous amount of abilities. You have to pick the 8 that you want. And it can be kind of difficult. I'm doing, as I mentioned, this is kind of my tanking build, or I haven't really tried some of the changes I made to it. But you can see I do have, just move in here. I have an ability that allows me to interrupt. You can see when I hold the ability down, you can see the cone of the attack. I'm going to go and use my interrupt, which is my knockdown ability. If I use my primary attack here, you can kind of see it. Just tap it. I swing. You can see the enemy has telegraphs as well. I'll go ahead and use another ability, my ranged attack. And what you might notice as well is that as I do abilities, here. There we go. What you may notice as well is as I do abilities, that the cone fills up. You'll notice the line kind of fills out there. So the cone itself shows you where the attack's going to land. The filling out shows you when the attack is actually done casting. So every attack has something of a cast bar on it. And so when an enemy attack's coming in, you can kind of see that. So I'm going to go ahead and fight some more enemies here real quick to kind of show that off. Now you might think being able to see the attacks might make it a bit easy, but I'm going to tell you that that's not always the case. Sometimes just because you know an attack is coming doesn't mean you can avoid it. Sometimes multiple attacks are going to come at you from different angles, and it's going to be very difficult to get out of the way. And honestly, the ability to see telegraphs I don't think really takes too much away from it, because there are a lot of abilities in other MMOs. While they don't have the circles on the ground, they have usually obvious cues that something is coming, or a tell, such as a rearing back of an enemy. Like he's about to do a big hit, you'll notice he'll swing his arm back. Honestly, there's lots of ways to usually tell when an attack is coming in most of these games. Let's see if I can get some enemy attacks coming. Now there's various shapes and sizes too. Just simple cones and circles are not the only thing that they have. I've seen many varied attacks, and as you can see this wolf is running around and attacking in different locations, so you can see the square kind of filled out as he was attacking. And there's 2 different types of these shapes as well. This one that fills out is pretty standard. That's a cast one. This means that the full force of the ability is going to happen when that circle or that shape fills up. Now you might see some of these will have a gradient to them. They'll have kind of lines like that one right there. See how there's lines to it, and then 2 more where they just filled out. The ones with the lines are fields that will constantly do damage to you. Like there's one I can avoid. I can avoid the full damage. But that one right there, see how it's got a gradient? That means it's doing damage over time, and so I have to get out of the circle or I'm going to take damage. So there are attacks that you can fully avoid, and there are attacks that you won't be able to fully avoid, but you can reduce the damage greatly by getting out of them. And again, there have been many different shapes and sizes of these abilities. Now, because you are using an action-based system, you're not going to find yourself with a lot of attacks that kind of do the same thing. Each attack is going to have some kind of purpose, which is something that I noticed in other MMOs, hot button MMOs. I noticed that I was getting some attacks that really just did the same thing, only hit maybe a little bit harder. Well, interesting thing about this, as I found out, is apparently you can attack nodes, like this iron node. You can't do it for trees, and you can't do it for relics for some reason, but you can attack iron nodes, or any kind of ore, and actually mine them if you're not a miner, supposedly. It's easier if you're a miner, though. Alright, so that's the action stats. I mean, I think it allows for a lot of variance. I mean, you can already see that at this level, I've got quite a bit of abilities. I get my final assault at 21, 31 for support, and 31 for utility. I believe the level cap is 50. So you get a lot of your abilities way before you get level cap. And then at that point, it's building your amps that's going to really differentiate you. But you don't need to have that many, I mean, to have abilities up to 50, because each one of these does something quite different. I mean, every one of my attacks, I've got my basic attack. This was Relentless Strikes. That's what you started with. All it does is damage to 5 foes. That's another thing. Almost every attack that you have is a cleave. So you can fight groups of enemies, and you can pretty much, you're always doing AoE. What I like about it is it gives this feeling of the game is that you feel kind of epic. Like, you feel powerful. I can go up and I fight 2 enemies, and I always have a cleave. I would also like to point out here that as I'm running up here, this game has a grand sense of scale for some of these zones. So as I'm moving in here into this area, you can see there is a giant robot over there. And he is obviously very big, because I am nowhere near him. And if I look down here, you can see where there are actual people that are quite tiny. In fact, he's so far out, I can't see the other creatures that are around him. I can see him attacking, though. And yes, he is attacking players on the ground randomly. Actually, I think he attacks the same location, but, you know. He is trying to escape. He's not worried about who he hits. But let's, I mean, taking a look at this, I mean, I've got this Power Strike, which has got a cooldown on it, and it requires me to have a certain amount of kinetic energy. Me being a warrior, it's almost like Rage. Whenever I attack, I generate this kinetic energy, but my attacks don't consume it. What it really is kind of a, I would almost say it's like momentum. You're building up momentum. Once you've got a lot of kinetic energy, you can just start dealing attacks, but if you're not using a generator to get more kinetic energy, you start to lose it. It decays, and it decays very quickly. So each of the classes has very unique mechanics on how they use resources. Using my tank build, now I have to admit I'm having a little difficulty with my tank build because there's not too lot that generates threat. I have these menacing strikes, and I've got these jolts, and I've got a reactive ability, but not much else. So I'm having difficulty with tanking, so I can't really give too much of an opinion on that, at least with this class. I may not just care for warrior tanking, but you can hold aggro and you can get healed in this game like you would a normal MMO, which is nice. Other things I have noticed as I've been playing, I'll show all this off to you really quick. I've had these little mini dungeons I've been going to. They're typically public events like this. I've already done this, so I'm not sure I can repeat it. Okay, it will let me, actually. This was actually part of the world's quest. This doesn't require a duty finder or anything like that. I just come in here. I'm on a ship. I'm in space now. I'm off the planet in my own little instance. In fact, if I come over here, you can see there is the planet. I run in here and I do my own little missions. And other players can ultimately come in here, but I like the fact that it takes you to these little areas that have their own mechanics. Like, for this mission, I mean, and this is just a quest, you would come in here and fight these monsters and stop them from taking these crystals. Now, I'm not going to be doing the game too much justice because what you are seeing right now is my tanking build, and my tanking build very specifically only has one primary attack. You can build up to have different attacks. So what I'll do is I'll kind of show you the action set and exactly just how flexible you can be. I'm just going to go ahead and get right out of this. I'm going to clear everything. Boom, everything's clear. I'm going to go ahead and give myself my Relentless Strikes, which is my basic attack. I'm going to give myself Power Strike, which allows me to hit multiple times very quickly. I'll go ahead and get Leap. I like Leap. It allows me to move in. I will grab, I'll show you Whirlwind and Ripsaw. Why not? Those are kind of nice. Let's see. Just Whirlwind. I will move this over to there. I'll move this to there. I like having kick. I just always like having kick because it's a knockdown. And I'll go ahead and grab grapple because I like grapple. So there we go. I've got all these abilities, and I can just move them around on my bar as I see fit. So 1, 3, there we go. Actually, I'll put that there. Awesome. Now I can, of course, power up any one of these as I see fit, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Simple. There we go. Use set, and I'm done. There we go. I am now something else. Now, I do have stances. A lot of classes will have stances that help them do specific things, especially since every class can either tank or heal. So you can see I have my stance for regeneration and shields. That's for tanking, and I can go to onslaught, which increases damage. I can also activate these. These are a cooldown. They last for... They take a minute, basically. Let's see how long they last. That's for a good amount of time. Alright, pull you in. Now there you can see there's one of the gradient abilities, which is doing damage over time. So that's my whirlwind. I can do it again, and you can see anything that stands in it is going to take damage for the entire duration. Now, not only do you have to move out of circles, you do have dodge moves, and you can dodge twice in succession. You can double tap to do it. Just kind of move back, and I'll show you a leap. Boom. And as you can see, I mean, here I am fighting multiple opponents. And yes, they do have the double kill, triple kill, and all that. But there I could just fight multiple opponents. Now, you do have to be careful because you can very quickly get overwhelmed and take a whole bunch of damage. You do have to watch out for that. But it's a lot easier than some other games. You don't have to worry about very specifically building for cleaving. You can be set up for it just with your basic attacks. I mean, this being an MMO, obviously there's a lot to talk about, so I'm kind of just giving you guys a general impression of how I felt about this game. And, you know, it does borrow a lot from other MMOs, and you'll definitely see that. But I think that works to its credit. I mean, if we talk about one of the most successful MMOs, and that would be World of Warcraft, then we're talking about a game that took ideas from other MMOs, put them in its own game, and then improved upon them over time. Every time there would be something that would become popular, usually in a mod or some sort, they would try and implement it into the default UI. Now, sometimes the mods would still do it better, but they would still try. Wildstar really feels like they're pulling what Blizzard does, in that they're trying to make the game pull from as many sources of other MMOs as they can, and make it so that the game feels familiar because of that. Because it feels familiar, if you've played other MMOs, you should be able to get right into it. Of course, if you haven't played other MMOs, then the game can be fairly complex. But the good news is they try to put tutorials into the game to really help you out. Now, again, the downside is there are bugs and there are problems, and this is unfortunately the issue that I might steer you away from. I feel that the game is really good. I feel that the game has a lot of promise, but a lot of the bugs can put some people off to it. For the most part, as I mentioned, there really hasn't been anything that's broken my experience. I haven't been able to... there haven't been any quest-stopping bugs so far that I've determined. I know that, like, for example, Elder Scrolls was having a lot of bugs with some quests, in which people could not complete their quest because the quest was bugged out. See, there we go. Multiple circles, that's what I'm talking about. He had an attack that flowed around him, and then other shapes that were also happening at the same time. And that was just from one enemy. So let me kind of see what this guy does for you, so you can kind of show that off. See, there it is. It's a circle around him, a circle in the area, and then a cone in front. And then you can see he just dived underground, and then the point where he came out had a big circle, but also, as he was leaping out, you may have noticed another larger circle appeared, and that larger circle appeared so fast, I really didn't have a chance to really react to it. So there are challenges to this game. There will be challenges. Now, I haven't played a dungeon yet, I have played an adventure. Adventures are kind of, I guess you could equate them to scenarios in World of Warcraft. That is what they tend to feel like. I never got to play the scenarios, but they are much the same. They're basically lots of little quests that you can do. And they're so far the only ones I've seen are a choose your own adventure style, which is kind of nice. So basically you're in the game, everybody gets to choose one of the 3 options. So you're basically given the story and it's like, okay, what would you like to do? One of these 3 things. And that of course will dictate where you go, the objectives you complete, and may affect the way that the next 2 options that you get will happen, because you have a total of 3 story branches from what I can tell. Now some of these adventures may be more than that. The way they described it, they described these adventures as this holodeck thing, because this is the future. You're basically playing these adventures in a VR environment. And so you can do anything. You can be anything. You don't have to be your own class, be your own race. You can be anything. They can change you. They could change me, even though I'm a human. They could change me to a Chua and have me running around with specific abilities, maybe a jetpack and a flamethrower. Call me Chua Fett for all I care. I don't know. They could potentially do that because it's a VR environment. And that's one thing I like about it, is that there's going to be plenty to do there. Now this game is going to focus on the hardcore. This game is not really meant specifically for the casual. They are going to try and harken to the days of old vanilla Warcraft. They're going to try and do 40-man raids. They have these things called war plots, which look fantastic. They are 40 versus 40 PvP, in which you build your own fortress. You actually build your fortress. You can buy buildings from architects. You put your buildings down, and then you basically have to come up with a strategy that you both defend your fortress while doing offense against the enemy fortress. And there's so many of you, you might have to make small strike teams. Maybe one to take out the enemy generator, while your main assault team is going in the front door, hoping that the generator will be down by the time they get there. Things like that. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. I mean, these choose your own adventures and war plots, they basically have evolving mission types. I mean, it really seems like the end game of this is going to be phenomenal. I just wish I would have gotten closer to it to really kind of see it, to give you guys more. Unfortunately, I was really locked into Final Fantasy for a good amount of time while the closed beta was going on. So I'm sorry I didn't get more out on that, but I have been kind of following them and seeing what they're doing with the game, and I do think that the devs are doing a great job. I think that they are taking feedback in stride and making changes. In fact, there was a controversy about the character models and the size of the female chest on one of the anthropomorphic characters. And so they actually went in, they reduced it. They're like, you know, we're getting this feedback, we want to make it right. I was kind of amazed by that. It was... I'll be honest, when I looked at it, I thought to myself too, I'm like, wow, I've seen characters with like super large busts in these games, and I was like, wow, that's big. Even by standards of these types of games. But yeah, I mean, they're taking that feedback and they're listening. Now, I've talked a lot about the good. I mean, let me talk a little bit about the bad. And you're kind of seeing a little of the bad here too, unfortunately. Now, I don't think I really care for Warrior. It could just be I don't like the class. This is the last class I hadn't tried, and so I'm doing it now. I typically like melee characters with giant swords. I liked it in Warcraft when I was playing tank there. I liked being a warrior tank in that game. But I don't know if I like it in this game. Just because the way the classes are built. You don't have to just use the swords. I mean, I can take this off and I can put in this jolt ability, and that pretty much gives me a gun that I can use when I have kinetic energy. So I can't really be ranged, like I can't use it now, but if I go in and I attack a couple times and I get enemies in the right location, I can kind of shoot at them here. But the downside has been I've felt like the game has been kind of grindy at certain points. Like, when I was playing in the old betas, the leveling was exceptionally slow. I mean, I only got, like, to level 10 and it took me a couple days to do that. Now I can get to level 10 really fast, but after level 10 it felt like it slowed down quite a bit still. But I did get to 16 within a couple days, and that wasn't bad. That was with only limited hours, of course, to play. But I did enjoy my experience up to this point. Before I got to 15, by the time I got to level 10, I was still enjoying it. But getting from 10 to 15 felt like it was taking a little bit of a long time. And part of that was really, I think, the questing. The questing has some really great moments. There have been some really unique quests in this game. From blowing up, basically I feel like it's WoW, where you go and you have multiple things to do, like I can blow up these holes that these monsters were crawling in. I've gotten special weapons to use. Like I mentioned how the soldier path gets special weapons to use. Well, you get those even as a normal player for some quests, just soldiers just get more of those. So there's been all sorts of things that I can do, but in this area specifically, like I'm over here in this area on the right, I've been in this area for a long time now. The monsters I'm killing, I have killed multiple times before. I would kill them for one quest, it would move me on, say, okay, go over here and do this, and I'd fight a new batch of monsters, great, then I'd go to another area, then I'd fight these monsters again. It's like, okay, we need you to clear these monsters out again. I'm like, why? You had me do that once before. The other thing is sometimes these monsters feel like they can take a little bit to kill. Now, part of that could be my character, my build. I am not built for assault power, I am built for tech power, which is basically all my tanking abilities. So I'm not doing as much damage as I could be doing. So part of the killing experience and the fact that it feels like it takes a long time to kill some of these enemies could be my fault. And I fully acknowledge that. I absolutely acknowledge that. But since some of these monsters take a while to kill, what I would really like to do is be able to go through an area, kill a bunch of monsters, and be done with it. There are some areas, like there was an area underground where I had to kill a whole bunch of spiders, and it was a fairly, it was a medium-sized cave, I would say. And I explored the entire cave, and by the time I was done, I still had a whole bunch of monsters I needed to kill. Now, when you're playing in an action game like this, that can be detrimental a little bit, I feel. Like, if I were playing a standard MMO, if I were playing WoW, or Final Fantasy XIV, right? If I were playing those, I'm kind of used to going in, kind of hitting a few buttons. I don't have to hit as many buttons because you do an ability, there's like a 2.5 second cooldown in Final Fantasy, and WoW there's like a 1 second global cooldown or something like that. And then you just push the next button. In this, I'm pushing these buttons multiple times a second. Because as you can see, some of my hits, like this number 2 ability, is a combo that I hit 4 times with. And I have to hit it for each point of that combo. So I'm having to do a lot more comparatively. And since it takes a lot more and it's an action-based set, usually I want to be able to go through a bunch of enemies, and I want to treat a cave like it was a level in a game. You know, like think of a 2D game, you know, side scroller or something. You get to the end of the level, you want to be done with the end of the level. You don't want to be told, okay, now you need to go back, kill those same monsters again, and then come back to the ending because you're not actually done yet. I know some games have done that, but that just doesn't seem like the right way to do it. I think what they could really do is tone down some of these quests, tone down the amount of things you need to kill in some regards. Now, not all of them are like that. A lot of these actually don't require a lot of things to kill. So it really feels like questing in the game is somewhat inconsistent. Some quests you're going to get done right away. Some quests are going to take a while. It's when you have to go back and do it again is where it really starts to feel and starts to drag on, I feel, and it doesn't need to do that. Like, I've cleared this entire area of monsters multiple times. I've gotten, I think, 3 to 4 sets of quests that have had me go back and forth doing the same thing over and over again. Now, story-wise, I can kind of understand that, but I think because there's so many quests and I'm in the same tiny area, they should either cut back on the quests, because some of them are redundant, really. I think what they could do is increase the experience gain on some of the quests, make it so there are fewer quests, Or maybe kill less things to get the quest done so that they could still tell the story. Because I was killing these creatures, these little ape-like creatures, at one point in order to stop them from attacking, or in order to clear their hovels and things like that. I had to blow up the holes that they come out of here with a special weapon. Then I had to come back and do it again because they were attacking certain scientists. You know, and it's like, okay, I can get the story, I can dig the story, I dig the fact that there is a story, but can you maybe, instead of having me do that as part of a chain, maybe give me all of those quests to do at once, so that I can just get it all done, and feel like I've accomplished more in one setting, rather than saying, okay, do it now, and then come back and do it later. So I do have some gripes with that, I mean, certainly. Where are these repair constructs? And this is the other thing. Sometimes these quests are not entirely... they don't entirely tell you exactly what you need to do here. Alright. Repair constructs. Circling the giant annihilator. Okay. Oh dear. Is that these things? Ah, here they are. Okay, so reading the quest text is important. Let's put it that way. I don't see more. Let's see. Can I hit one of them? Maybe not. Alright. I'm going to try and do something with these to kind of show you off. Now, this is one of those special kind of quests which is really nice. It's a quest where you have an item that you have to use. Rather than put it in your inventory, what they do is you can kind of see there's a little T there. That lets me know that I have to push that button, the letter T, in order to do what I need to do against that creature. Kind of move away and see if I can't show off this quest real quick. Well, I targeted one. Okay, that succeeded, but unfortunately I didn't actually get to see the result of what I did. That's the downside. Okay. Usually some of these quests like that, which involves using a giant targeting laser, something spectacular happens. Like, I've caused avalanches to occur, I've caused all kinds of havoc in the world. So, I mean, for the gripes I have about the questing, there are equally amount of praise I have for this game. There is a lot to do. I mean, the whole running, dashing, double jumping, and things like that really lends to exploration, true exploration, going around and finding things that are out there, especially if you're on the explorer path. I'm not even sure what else I could say about it. I mean, that's really... there's good and there's bad here. There's good and there's bad. I don't want to just sing the praises of Wildstar and say, oh, it's the greatest, it's a fantastic game. It is good. I think it is good. But you need to know that there is some things that are just not there yet, I don't think. And it really does kind of concern me that the release date is so close with a lot of the issues that they've got when it comes to bugs. Good news, again, the bugs that they have are, so far, minor. They haven't completely broken things. Although other people may have had varying experiences with that. I couldn't really... I've read the Twitter, I've seen them talking a lot about bugs that they've had and people having issues logging in and things like that. Now, I have had some issues where the game stutters a lot, like the game won't load right away when I change zones. Little things like that. But obviously, like I said, nothing breaking it, nothing preventing me from really playing or doing what I need to do. I do want to mention that one thing I do like about this, if you like these kind of games, but maybe you don't really care for the story, because I have mentioned there is a lot of story and there's ways to get that story. one thing is that you don't have to experience the story if you don't want to. When you're doing quests and you talk to somebody, there is usually an option where you can just click the white text. There'll be a few options there. The white text is, oh, there we go, big kaboom. There's usually white text there that lets you know that's what you have to push to get the quest and accept the quest. But there's also little options to click on, almost like out of other single-player RPGs, where you can actually talk to the quest giver and ask about the lore. So you can ask, well, why do you need this? Why do you need me to go and give you 5 death root? You know, why do you need this? And they'll tell you. They'll give you the lore of the area. And not only that, but you'll notice when I was coming up here, there was a lore book on the path. Oh, hello. So this quest is now requiring me to fight these things. So there are lore books. There's datacrons, which actually have voice acting on them that will give you the lore of the land. So there's lots of lore here for people that want it, but the lore is never shoved down your throat. You can skip the cutscenes. You can not use the conversation options to find out what's going on. Like, here's what I'm talking about. You get the white text. This doesn't have any conversation options, but some of the quests do. And you can ask about it, if you so desire. So they are taking heed, I think, to all the schools of thought there. There seems to be a fairly robust crafting system in the game. You've seen a few things that you can gather. I've been gathering some mines. There's trees here that you can cut down. Also down here are these relics, which relic hunters can pick up. So there's 3 different gathering professions. There's like, I think, 6 different crafting professions. There is armor smithing. There's different types of armor smithing. So you have tailors, you have blacksmiths, which do heavy armor, outfitters, which do medium armor. You have me getting stuck because I'm an idiot. What else? Tailors. And kind of like WoW, oddly enough, tailors are the odd man out in which they don't have a gathering profession to work on. They have to either trade or get cloth from killing enemies, I think. I haven't really quite worked that one out because I haven't been a tailor yet. But there's the relics. You can create augments to gear and things like that. I guess I'll go ahead and real quick, since I've gone over everything else, I'll go ahead and talk about gear since I've just mentioned it. You have the standard gear. You've got a weapon. You've got... this is your shield. This is, again, kind of the capacity here. You can see that I have a health bar and a shield. The shield will regenerate over time when I haven't taken damage. Shoulders, chest, gloves, boots, and all the like. There is a costuming system that you can unlock. You can basically, it's transmogrification or vanity slots, depending upon what games you've played in the past. You have to go to a main town in order to configure it. It used to be you could do it on the field, but the UI was buggy. It never really quite worked right. So apparently now you just have to go to a guy in town. Now I can tell you that some of these UIs are quite clunky. The UI for the costumes is also tied in with the UI for dyes. There are dyes. You can dye your gear whatever color you want, but it is clunky and it just feels like it's not quite ready. Like it's not, if some of the interfaces feel like an engineer designed them. Like they wanted to fulfill a function and they did exactly that, but they didn't quite worry about usability. So there are problems there. But when you can get past that, then you're usually okay. And the giant robot just blasted me with his eye lasers. That should have killed me. I'll be honest, that should have killed me. These are your primary stats. I mean, they take the place of strength, dex, and all that. And the important thing here is that they do different things. So, for example, my brutality here, it gives me assault power. Assault power is directly tied to this assault tree. Assault power means that everything in this tree is going to do more damage as long as I have more assault power. Thing is, if you are a Esper, for example, or I'm sorry, let's say an engineer. You're an engineer, right? You're doing stuff with technology. Your tech is actually going to give you support power. Tech for me is my support power because I do use laser pistols and energy shields and things like that. So that's where my support powers come in. So since I want to be a tank, I'm going to be augmenting my support. But another class might have different powers that do different things. So maybe if you're a medic, your attack is going to be your assault power, but maybe something else will be your support power. Maybe your insight will be your support power. For me, that's deflection. Now, going over stats, I am a little concerned about this. There is a deflect critical hit chance. Enemies can crit you, and this is a stat to reduce that chance. The reason why I'm concerned about this stat is because it reminds me of defense in World of Warcraft. And it was a very clunky stat. In World of Warcraft, you could completely eliminate the enemies to crit you. You could actually push it off the damage roll table. And the problem with that was you could actually find gear upgrades that had less defense, but had everything else you needed. So you ended up holding onto a piece of gear that was technically an upgrade, but because you lost that defense, you could be crit again, and it would make you unusable in a dungeon or raid. And I didn't quite like that gear juggling. I mean, when you figured it out, I mean, it was sometimes could be satisfying, but honestly, I feel that it was more frustrating than the positives allowed. I'm hoping that this stat doesn't become the be-all, end-all, or if it is useful, that it is useful similarly to other stats. We'll have to see. I mean, it just concerns me a little bit. I haven't been able to do any of that stuff to know for sure. There are specific PvP stats here, offense and defense, and you can see in the amps here, very specifically, some of these will go into that. Like here is increased PvP defense. So you might have, when you get a third action set, because I'm pretty sure you will get more, you may want to put one action set into your damage dealing, your second action set into whatever it is you want to do, such as tank or healing, and then maybe a third into PvP or something like that. It depends on how you want to do it, because you can PvP pretty early in this game, so you could very easily do that. Do that early, and start putting amps into it. Alright, let's see. Titles, you do get wonderful titles. You have reputations. Mounts, you do earn. At level 15 is when you can start using mounts, but they cost about 10 gold. Chances are you won't have that kind of money. Unless you absolutely save everything, in which case you might have half of that. I can't really say for sure, because I spent a lot of money in crafting to test it out. But what I like about it is this. I can't show it to you, unfortunately, but just as I can customize my gear, like I have different costumes and I can hide certain pieces if I want, and there is specific costume gear, by the way. The headpiece I'm wearing came from being a soldier. It is very specifically just a soldier's cap. And over here I have boots that are very specifically boots that don't do anything, which, if I could find them, I would demonstrate that. Which apparently I can't. Oh well. We'll move on. I mean, the very specifically here, I just wanted to show off that that's all this is. This is for a costume. I can put it on a costume slot. I'm wearing it right now because I don't have any other headpieces. But you can customize your gear to look how you want, but your mounts can do the same. You're going to get a basic mount, and some mounts are things like hoverboard. There's like hoverboards. There's what look like giant hamster balls. There are motorbikes, all sorts of things. And you can put stuff on your mounts. It's got 4 different slots, as you can see, front, rear, side, and right. And you can just outfit your mount to look unique. And you can just buy all sorts of stuff to make your mount as well as your character look how you want to look. And I've seen some pretty interesting looks in this game from some people. Oh, here's something cool that I get to show. These are discovery points. These show up randomly in the world. It doesn't matter what path you have, they'll just show up. This one doesn't look like it did anything, oddly enough. Well, that saddens me. But some of those discovery points will pop up a buff station or something like that to help you out, or sometimes will give you items. I have gotten items from them. Speaking of random things that can happen, I wish I could show it off, but I have had these nodes for mining attack me. Those ore can be on the back of a creature, and that creature will come up and will start attacking me if it doesn't like what I'm doing, and then I can attack it to get more ore. I have actually heard a report, and I saw the corpse of one of these things, of one of these mining nodes becoming a giant creature that the person had to kill, and they could then use its corpse to teleport to a small zone in which there was a whole bunch of ore inside the body of the beast that they could mine. So it was like a bonus piece of, it was like a bonus level or something like that. There's all sorts of little breakout things like that. When you get stunned, you have to hit a button or mash buttons, certain specific buttons, or doing things in a certain way. There's all sorts of like these little mechanics that make the game very interactive that I quite like. There's so much to go over, obviously. I know I've gone over a lot, and I know I haven't gone into real detail about any one system. I'm thinking that I might just go ahead and do a walkthrough. When I'll pre-purchase the game and do a walkthrough with some of the characters, so that if you're still on the fence, maybe you can kind of see the systems as they open up to you as the player, so you can, if you're not sure but you're kind of interested, maybe you can get a feel for it. Because I really think it's one of these things where I'm not doing it justice, just because there's so much to talk about, so much to do, that it can get lost or muddled in my explanation. And I don't feel I'm doing it justice, but at the same time, I don't want, as I said earlier, I don't want you to think that it's perfect. There are definitely issues, but if anything that I've mentioned as an issue doesn't put you off, then by all means, I feel you should give it a try. It has a lot of great humor in it, and that is what I've been enjoying about it the most. I have been enjoying the fact that a lot of the quests I've been doing have this humor to them. I helped this one guy who was trapped in the middle of a lake, who apparently he couldn't swim. It was fairly deep, so he's like, hey, help me out. I lost my escape device in the water. So I go in the water, I find this device, which apparently was a jetpack. The jetpack malfunctions, and it launches him into the stratosphere. So even though I helped him, he still dies. But hey, I got my quest experience, whatever. You know, that, and again, the paths. I think that is one of the greatest things they could have done. Because I like Guild Wars 2, and I love the fact that I could go out and explore. Not everybody likes that. So I can be an explorer and relive that. You could be a soldier if you like to kill stuff. That's just how it works. You could be a settler. Like right here, there's normally a giant building that appears, and if settlers work together, they can build it to make this tiny little settlement appear, and which can possibly give you buffs and things like that. The crafting system is pretty neat. I like it. It's fairly random, so if you're into crafting, just kind of let me buy something here so I can kind of show it off just a little bit. I'm like, have no money. You have your standard schematics. You pick something to make. It shows you the crafting requirements. You load the schematic. And then what happens is one of the stats is taken up for you already, and it's random. So it's like finding dropped gear. If I cancel out of this, I've still lost the crafting materials. This item, when I craft it, is going to have a level of tech on it. I can put power cores into this, and that dictates how many of these things I get down here, and dictates how high I can pump other stats. I can't touch this stat right now. But this other one I can touch, and I can make it whatever stat I want. So you can, not only is there a level of randomness, there is actually a level of customization. So the tech is always going to be here. So if you like tech on your gear, great. That'll be great for you. If you don't, then you might not like a piece of gear that I'm about to make here. But I can put anything else on it. I can't double up the tech, but I can put insight, grit, which is hit points, brutality, finesse, moxie, whatever. What you may notice is that this does say best match. It is a red beam here. So that means you're going to get more out of this if I use, say, brutality. So I can pump up brutality to level 12 before it breaks. As you see, 1% chance to fail, 100%. So that goes up to 12. Well, what happens if I choose insight? It too can go up to 12, but just barely. You can see it has a much higher chance to fail at 22%. That's because if I'm using something that's not a perfect match, I have to put more points into it to make it work. So as you can see, I can customize the gear just a tiny bit. And the crafting system is fairly elaborate. It has its own tech trees, in which you have to perform certain achievements or certain tasks to unlock more gear. In this case, for example, you would have to craft type 2 leg armor in order to unlock the type 2 feet. You would also then get a talent point, and there are talent points for crafting, as you can see here. You can get talents that give you increased capacity, which is that energy level, to specific types of armor. In this case, I could do chests or gloves, I could do legs and boots, or head and shoulders. So that makes me more efficient in one of those spots. So crafting can be crafting can be rather robust here. And because it's semi-random, it means that there's going to be plenty of gear out there that crafters can make and can sell on the auction house. Speaking of auction houses, I do want to mention that there is an auction house. It is not a real money auction house. Thank you. Just like any other MMO, there's an auction house where you can go sell your gear. But commodities are done differently. If you played Diablo 3 back when the auction house was still around, it looks like it follows that model in which that you put something up for sale, and like the commodities auction house for D3, not the regular, but the commodities. You put something up for sale, the game will show you what the most recent price was, and then you can try to bid lower, and if someone is selling lower, you'll get it. So if you're trying to sell, you may want to either bid equal to what the current bid is or bid lower. So commodities, you cannot see the exact price of what people are selling like you can on the auction house. Anyone that's played maybe Final Fantasy XI might know what I'm talking about more directly, because it's a lot like that. It's kind of a blind bid. You can, again, you see the most recent purchase. You can't see a purchase history, which is kind of unfortunate. You can't see what the last 5 purchases, for example, were. But you can see what the current price is, and you can try and go over or under if you need to. Oh man, that was a lot to go over. Yeah, this is Wildstar. I mean, I think it's pretty good. I'll see about getting you guys some content for it, just to see if you might be interested in it. I mean, obviously, if you have questions, there's the comment section below. Again, I do apologize if I didn't really feel like I did it justice, but I did want to at least get something out there, because I know I've been neglectful of the game, even though I've been talking it up for quite a bit. I do recommend going to their YouTube channel and checking out their dev speaks and seeing what they have to say about the game. You may be interested in it. And I thank you very much for watching this particular video, and I'll see you next time.